Ben and Me, Chapter 15. Happy Birthday. It is not surprising that I preferred to stay at home, surrounded by these lively young ones, rather than to accompany Ben to his innumerable dinners and committee meetings. Now that the war was over, these were very dull and unimportant affairs anyway, at which Ben seldom needed my advice. I slept through all of them and suspect that Ben usually did too. However, I hesitated to mention my boredom lest I hurt his feelings. The approach of his 81st birthday promised a solution of the difficulty. I had noticed for some time that he was becoming slightly ashamed of the old fur cap, which really was pretty shabby. A few days before his birthday, I purchased the finest beaver hat to be found in the whole city of Philadelphia. It was a splendid affair, pale gray, turned out in the latest French fashion, and just Ben's size. It cost me a pretty penny, too. In fact, I had to call on my brother Claude, Daniel, and Ephraim for some financial aid, which they gladly supplied. I told my family and Sophia's of my plans for Ben's birthday. They were overjoyed at an opportunity to show their gratitude to one who had done so much for us all and plunged into their preparations with the greatest enthusiasm. On the eve of Ben's birthday, we gathered behind the books in his study. There was quite a crowd. All my brothers and sisters, from Bathsheba to Zenas, with their husbands, wives, and children were there, as well as Sophia, her husband, and their children. My mother and father were also present, both now quite gray, but hale and hearty as ever. All were twittering with excitement, and every last one bore a present of some sort for Ben. Prompt on the stroke of midnight, as he nodded over his writing, we swarmed forth, the children's gay voices upraised in the chorus of Happy Birthday to You. Ben, at first overwhelmed by surprise and pleasure, soon recovered, joining in the spirit of the occasion with greatest gusto. The gifts were first presented. My mother's was a beautifully knitted earmuff. There had been time to finish only one, she explained, but the mate would be complete before cold weather set in. My father's offering was a watch charm, most skillfully gnawed from a shell of a black walnut. Sophia's was an exquisite piece of fancy work, while her husband's was a thimbleful of rare brandy brought with him in his flight from France. This Ben gaily tossed off with a hearty toast to us all. While the rest made their presentations, I, with 12 or 13 of my strongest brothers, slipped quietly from the room. Just as the last grandchild finished their little speech and curtsy, we staggered in with the hat. Ben's joy knew no bounds. The gifts and honors that had been heaped upon him by the great people of foreign lands seemed as nothing in his eyes to the beauties of this hat. He tried it on before the mirror, and it fitted perfectly. It really didn't look bad on him either. He insisted on wearing it all the rest of the evening, and was much amused when the younger children used its broad brim for a racetrack. Crackers, cheese, and ale appeared for the older folk, and barley sugar for the young ones. Then there were more singing and dancing. Sophia's eyes sparkled as she went through the graceful figures of the minuet. I even essayed a few steps myself, with fair success. My brother Daniel's oldest girl, who was rather talented that way, recited several poems. The climax of the entertainment came when Sophia and her husband sang, as a duet, one of Ben's poems. She had set it to music, which she had written especially for this occasion. Ben was greatly touched and made them repeat it several times. I did enjoy the music. After the happy throng had departed, I could see that Ben looked a little worried. Amos, he said finally, this magnificent hat, it seemed to contain no place for you. What can I do without you? Ben, I said, patting his shoulder, you can see the responsibilities I have now, all these eager young minds needing guidance and instruction. You know that I'll always be here in the old fur cap hanging on the bedpost if you really need me. But you're 81 years old today, Ben. I think you're old enough to get around by yourself. As usual, Amos, he said. You're right. Tomorrow I will step out and show this old town what a real hat looks like. All right, I said, as I curled up in the old fur cap, now all my own. But do watch out for the mud holes. And here the manuscript ends. Oh my goodness, I sure like that story. I hope you enjoyed Ben and me too. As our friend Tigger says, ta-ta for now. Love you guys. Bye-bye.